Welcome to SIMcast, a podcast brought to you by the Society for Imaging Informatics and Medicine.
Greetings, SIMcast listeners. Today we're meeting up with two bright young ladies who have been participating in the SIIM Hackathon, talking about their experience, their observations, their impressions of the SIIM community. First, we have Sophie Shi, who is a student at Stuyvesant High School with a wide range of interests, from AI and app development to acting and dance. She has attended the SIIM conference and participated in its hackathon twice, winning second place both years. Inspired by these experiences, Sophie has continued to pursue imaging informatics and medical AI through various research internships and projects throughout high school. And then we have Estella Yi, who is a senior at the same high school. She is passionate about many interests, including technology and biology, theater, and sports. She's attended the SIIM Hackathon in 2024 after being involved in an internship at an AI imaging company for radiology. Since then, she has continued pursuing bioinformatics, now on a more molecular level. She currently conducts research in ovarian cancer and cellular imaging. I really had the pleasure of chatting with these two ladies, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. All right, SIMcast listeners, welcome to this new episode. I'm sitting here with Coulter, my co-host for today, and two young ladies, Estella and Sophie. Very nice to have you here with us today. I want to start by asking you both how you found out about domain of imaging informatics, SIIM, and the SIIM Hackathon. So I know, Sophie, in your case, there's a little bit of a family connection, but I still want to hear your thoughts, and then I want to hear from Estella, the first time you heard about this thing called imaging informatics. So go ahead, Sophie.
Yeah, so my dad is involved with SIIM, and we had this opportunity to intern at his company, MDAI, and it happened to fall around the time SIIM was going on, and so we decided that we'd take the trip. I think that year it was in DC. So I think me and Estella went into it. We weren't very familiar with the field, and so I think it was kind of intimidating when we first went. But yeah, we had a great time. We learned a lot, and it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I definitely went into it not knowing anything about radiology or imaging or AI at all, which is what we ended up integrating into our workflow for our hackathon project later on. But everyone at SIIM was really helpful. We got in touch with a professor from Johns Hopkins, I believe, Dr. Terry Sipple Schmidt, and she was able to kind of help us guide where we wanted to take our project in the hackathon, and also just introduce us to everybody at SIIM, introduce us to the events that we could, attend at SIIM, like some of the lectures or some of the meet and greets with the other professors and other students as well. And so even though I kind of went into it not knowing anything about, the healthcare environment or radiology, and this was kind of the first time I've ever, interacted with like medical professionals as well, I felt very comfortable in the environment and in, what SIIM had to offer. I feel like I was able to,
Yeah, I agree. We had a lot of mentors. Like during the hackathon, I know Alex Barrington, they were all helping us out, and we felt really comfortable when at home, and yeah, it was a very friendly environment. So
Glad to hear that. So I do have a couple of follow-up questions for both of you, if you don't mind. So Sophie, you mentioned the internship. I'm actually curious, how far into that internship were you at that time? AKA, how fresh were you when you arrived at SIIM, with this whole jargon of radiology? And for you, Stella, I'm actually curious to hear about your impression of a hackathon. Was this your first hackathon? Have you had ones before? So go ahead.
we were, I think, 2 or 3 weeks in. It was a very short kind of internship, but during the internship, we were actually working on a project. We were working with a Berkeley CS student. And so we thought this project was actually a great one to continue working on during the hackathon. And so that's kind of where we started, where we got our idea. And then we kind of integrated a lot of SIIM data and, HL7 and a lot of the other things that were required for the hackathon.
And for me, this was definitely my first hackathon. And I guess my impression of a hackathon before I entered was very much just a giant room of people hacking away on their computers for like an hour or so and competing to see who could produce, I guess, the best code to solve different problems. But this was very different from what I imagined because it was about making a project, formulating, like taking into account real life medical issues or real life problems that we encountered, and then trying to build like a fully fleshed, idea to address it. And so instead of, the little like super quick coding competitions that I imagined, it was a lot more collaborative efforts, both within, my team and also other teams. We could ask questions to other teams. It was a very not competitive environment, in my opinion. Everyone's very helpful, but we did spend a lot of late nights, trying to figure out what we were doing. And I don't know, we were at the cafe at the hotel till like 2 a.m. in the morning sometimes. But yeah, it was very, very fun.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to add, I agree with Estella. I think the biggest thing that surprised me was that the presentation and the execution of our slideshow, our pitch was just as important as the code itself. And I think that was where we went really well. I think we had a great story behind our project and we were able to present it in a very clear way. And so even though we weren't the biggest code experts at the time, I think since our presentation and, the way we presented our topic was very strong. I think that's one thing that we did really well.
Yeah, so if I could just add a follow-up on that, I know for a lot of our listeners, we've been doing this thing where we are talking about people's informatics journeys and things like that. And, since you all are kind of, I guess, relatively early in your informatics journey, Sophie, you have a family connection and things like that, but I guess, did you have any experience in the field of, AI or coding or anything like that before going into this with SIIM and the hackathon and things like that?
So my dad's an AI enthusiast, and I think through his influence, he's always showing us these cool YouTube videos, and he's very up to date with latest technology. So I did kind of have some experience with AI, and I did lightly learn some Python and JavaScript before, but I wasn't a big coder at the time, but I did have some exposure. But I think this in the informatics field, this kind of integration, this intersection of AI and medicine was very new to me. And I think it was really interesting seeing AI being applied to the medical field. And that was something I hadn't seen before. So,
And for me, I guess the only coding experience I really had was from taking computer science lessons at Stuyvesant for high school. But that was very like elementary. We kind of just followed, problem sets and prompts that our teacher gave us. And so this was creating something from our own vision was definitely very new. And then with AI, my family's kind of the opposite, where we're not very up to date with the newest technology at all. And so the only thing that I really knew about AI was like ChatGPT, which was still very kind of new to everybody at the time. And everyone's kind of using it to, do like simple tasks, like just ask small questions. And it wasn't really like we learned about the agentic workflow at MDAI at the internship. And that was still kind of a new idea then. And so I didn't really have much experience, dealing with AI at all.
yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how different the 2024 hackathon was compared to the 2025 hackathon and how fast AI has progressed. Because I don't think we vibe coded at all. Like the coding was done pretty much on our own, and with the help of the CS student at Berkeley. And comparing 2024 to 2025, I think 2025 was a lot easier because we had a much more powerful LLMs that did a lot of the coding for us. I think it was much easier of a process through vibe coding. So yeah, I just find that very funny, and how fast things have changed, how much things have changed even since the 2025 hackathon.
Before we started recording, you mentioned something, Sophie, that I am actually now interested to hear more about. You were saying that you feel like AI may have had an impact on your journey even in high school. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, if you compare high school now to maybe like 4, 5, even 10 years, like 10 years ago, it's completely different. And I feel like the teachers, the education system, they're all kind of scrambling to figure out what to do with students using LLMs and, ChatGPT to do the work, like cheating, things like that. And I feel like we've seen that some teachers try to integrate it into the curriculum. Like I know some assignments, they ask us to use AI. Like for example, I had a writing assignment where the teacher asked us to compare what ChatGPT says to our words, things like that. And then other teachers are very much pushing back on AI, and they're kind of putting up all these preventative measures to make sure that, the work we do is completely our own. And so I feel like I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in a few years. But yeah, that's something we're seeing in our high school. Oh, Estelle, do you want to talk about the phone ban? I feel like that's very interesting, and that does change a lot of things. Like the devices.
When I was at school and in New York City, they recently instilled a phone ban for all public schools, and it's also just internet-enabled devices in general. So we can't use our laptops during our free periods. We have to leave the school if we wanted to use our devices. And I think the intent behind it was more to encourage people to, stay focused in their schools and, to limit distractions and disruptions, but then also, to limit how if we can use AI to be doing our homeworks and stuff like that during school hours. But I mean, it's kind of, I feel, created in this environment in our school specifically just because Stuyvesant is like a very rigorous school. Its reputation is definitely very, a lot of work, a lot of stress. And so there's a lot of pushback from students and their parents to not have the phone ban be applied to Sty so we can, do our homework during school hours. And it's also a little bit frustrating just because like our teachers haven't really transitioned back from using technology to assign homework. So a lot of my assignments are still digital and still online. So I don't really have a lot of physical, assignments. But also adding on to the point of like how teachers are kind of approaching AI in their classes, I do think that, we have one class in our school called digital storytelling, and it's basically entirely AI storytelling where they generate like music and they generate images, just kind of play around with AI, which is, I think classes like that are a good way for students to kind of experience and learn how to use AI in ways other than just menial tasks like, cheating on homework or cheating on tests. And so I do think that like administration and education should move towards integrating AI into the workflow and teaching people how to actually use it in a productive manner, because it is such a bigger thing than what people think it is. It's such a bigger thing than just the answer to all your problems.
I kind of wanted to go back to exposure to informatics. I feel like for high schoolers, it's a very niche field. None of my peers really are exposed to informatics. And I doubt there are any classes that are offered at Stuyvesant. And I feel like, Stuyvesant is it's a specialized high school. We have a lot of class offerings, a lot of electives, and like a really wide range of, APs, but none of them cover informatics. I think maybe the closest thing is data science, but yeah, other than that, I feel like not many students know about it. And so this is really interesting. So after the hackathon, Estella, Alina is one of our friends that worked in the hackathon with us. We decided that we really wanted to start a club at Sty. We called it Stymedics AI, and we started this the fall of our junior year. And we were really excited after the hackathon, and we wanted to share with our classmates like what AI and medicine, like how it's being integrated. And we thought that it was a really cool topic, and we held a few meetings about that. Yeah.
Nice. That's really cool to hear. And the points you brought up, Estella, are very spot on. To be honest, I don't know if it's necessarily specific to high school. I feel like the whole world is trying to figure out how to react to this AI wave. Some verticals or domains more so than others. As you were speaking, I was smiling because you reminded me there's a meme on the internet. Obviously, this is going to be an audio-only podcast, so I can't share the meme here. But you can search for it later. It's you just search for "radiologist driving to work" meme. It basically starts with 2015, Elon Musk saying we'll have driving cars in 2 years, and the next quadrant is Jeffrey Hinton saying in 2016, stop training radiologists because we're going to replace them with AI. And then the third quadrant is 2024, picture of cars stuck in traffic, radiologists driving to work. They're still employed and they're still having to drive their own cars. It's not to say that it's not made a difference in a domain like radiology or informatics. Definitely has. But there was definitely a lot of hype initially, and a lot of people were not sure how to react to it. And I feel like we're now starting to find more applications that are actually realistically doable, and now it's becoming a common thing. Of course, Coulter, you're a practicing radiologist, so you could probably speak to this better than I do. But I feel like every radiology practice at this point has some form of AI in place in use, maybe even more than one. Maybe Coulter, you could give your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think from my experience, I mean, I'm relatively recently out of training, and I've worked at 3 institutions in the last 3 years, training and attendingship and so on and so forth. And I think the one thing that I have found is if you've worked at one practice, you've worked at one practice. There's no standardized way that anyone does anything. And I think even the degree to which practices adopt AI and these informatics tools is extremely variable. Some places have crazy tools that they use in every workflow. I know a lot of the big private practices out nationally have like their own proprietary stuff that they've developed. Some of the academic places I've worked have, just 1 or 2, like the big name tools that are implemented. But I think, as you guys said, it's a big deal and the wave is coming. So it's definitely it's a hot ticket right now for sure.
So I want to pivot to a different topic just because I'm interested in hearing some of your impressions from the SIIM community. I've got a little bit of an open-ended question for you ladies. So when you were at SIIM, at the hackathon, late nights hacking, mentors and teams and whatnot, are there any specific moments that stood out to you? Conversations, meeting with someone, or even a session that maybe you attended? Estella, if we can maybe start with you and then Sophie can weigh in.
I think one of the moments that most standed out to me was when the night before we were all going to present, Sophie, Alina, and I went downstairs to the hotel lobby to kind of try to ask one of our mentors for help because we were, I think, running into just a small issue with our code. And we found everybody there who was going to be presenting the next day. So all the students from Marquette University as well. And there was basically a line for people to, ask questions to the mentors. But we ended up instead getting help and having conversations with the other students that were there. Even though we were all stressed out about our projects, we kind of were able to help each other contribute to each other's work. And I think one part that we were having trouble with was actually integrating into Fire, but we were able to, another team, I think also had the same similar problems, and they just suggested something that we could try. And that was just kind of something that stood out to me because I was never really used to the environment, just working together, helping each other, even if you were on, I guess, opposing teams. This was not a competitive space at all. That was really special, I think.
Yeah, I actually find that night really memorable too. I remember the exact moment she was talking about. I think for me, another memorable moment was kind of the day before. I think the 3 of us, we were kind of walking around and interacting with people that had their booths set up, and we actually got a chance to pitch our hackathon idea to many professors that were there. And it was really kind of a fun experience because not only did we learn about what they were doing at SIIM, but then we also had the chance to get advice and feedback from all these different people who had professional experience. And so, yeah, we got so much like valuable advice about, pitching, presenting, and also like what we can tweak in our project. And I feel like that really prepared us for the actual presentation.
Yeah, we pitched probably over 10 times to 10 people just to get that practice in. But we met so many different advisors, and like the conversations weren't just about, our projects, but they were also about how we were feeling at the competition. People were just kind of making sure that we were feeling comfortable the entire time, especially because we were high schoolers. I think we were the only high schoolers there. We were so young in comparison to, everybody else. And so I think they really were trying to make sure that we felt like we also belonged in that community. And nobody was ever judging us for being younger. Nobody was ever kind of diminishing our efforts or undermining our abilities. They were always trying to uplift us, because like I think that's what the community was really just about. It was just about learning and contributing to SIIM and medical imaging, and learning.
I was wondering if, honestly, Estella, if you could like expand on that a little bit in terms of, you were, obviously very young at the time, coming in with, relatively little experience, compared to these people who've been like coding these projects for decades. And I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on, kind of where or how you see informatics working with all of these different people and all the cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. You've got the clinicians, you've got the informaticists, you've got the statisticians and the coders, and, how you saw kind of all of those pieces working together, and kind of how it worked when you were there in 2020.
Well, I definitely think that after interacting with so many different people, we were kind of able to see like each person had their own opinions on what direction we should take our project and what kind of things that we could see us doing in the future with. I remember there was one moment, because for MDII, that was mostly like a radiology imaging tool that we were kind of presenting. So while we were there, we didn't just do the hackathon, we also presented the company to the other people at the convention, and we were able to walk around and look at, the other technology that was being presented as well. And so that was definitely more on the imaging part. But then we also talked to a lot of data scientists, specifically from Johns Hopkins, who were kind of suggesting like, oh, this is how data is being used in healthcare right now. These are kind of some problems that we ran into. And then we also talked to a lot of clinicians who, our original project idea was based off trying to make medical reports more accessible to patients, more readable for patients, because, they can't always decipher like the medical jargon that professionals are using. And so they were kind of able to weigh in their own opinions on what they've seen with their patients and stuff like that. I think one moment when we were talking to, I forgot who the exact person was, but we were talking to a radiologist, and we were presenting our project. And one of the ideas that we pitched was also including a compassion score in the AI medical report that was, catered to the patient. And the professor asked us a question, and he was like, why would one patient deserve more compassion than the other? Which I thought, that has stuck with me for a long time, just because I thought like that was just a very interesting another problem to navigate. As in addition to our project, we didn't end up including the compassion score in the project that we presented at the hackathon. One, because we didn't have enough time. We had, just the basics down by then. And two, we, didn't know the answer to that question. But it's something that we started thinking about afterwards, because that radiologist brought it up. And so having people from different experience and backgrounds being able to contribute their own professional opinions was really helpful in kind of becoming more experienced in medical AI and in imaging informatics, just because, we don't know, and like I didn't know anything about it, but just hearing their stories could give you context about, what we were actually doing.
I'm loving hearing about this. You're touching on a lot of subjects, and it's getting hard for me to pinpoint questions, but I'm going to try and ask another one. So I can tell for both of you ladies, this seems like it was a profound, in a positive way, experience. Seems like you've learned a lot of lesson, walked away with a lot of new skills, friends, etc. I'm curious, how do you feel this has changed your life since that experience? I'd like to start with Estella, but Sophie, when your turn comes, I know you came back for the hackathon the year after. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. But go ahead, Estella.
I would say that, I didn't end up continuing on with the imaging informatics route, but I got a lot more interested in just bioinformatics in general, computational biology. I ended up reaching out to a few professors throughout the city to try to get more experience on like the microscopic kind of parts of imaging informatics, because that was also something that was brought up during, our time at MDAI, like not just doing radiology for patients, but trying to get an image of like tumors and stuff like that. So I've been working on some projects that involve a lot of like DNA sequencing and also just like imaging of tumors, but in the more subcellular environment. Some of the technology I've worked with, they, instead of annotating like organs in a human being, they annotate parts of a cell, like actin, to try to figure out what kind of stage the cell is going through. And so I kind of took a different route, steering away from like coding for medical companies and stuff like that. But I'm still very much interested in integrating AI and computational biology and medicine in the future.
Yeah, I think we walked away with a lot of valuable skills. One thing was networking. For sure, we got to talk to a lot of professors, and some of those professors I ended up working with later on, which is really cool. And I think learning how to present and speak publicly was also a very useful skill, and that's something I've applied to many things later on. After SIIM, that was my first exposure to like imaging informatics. It definitely changed my idea of what my professional future would look like. This is really interesting. I had no interest in working in the STEM field at all, actually. I think my goals until sophomore year was to become an actor, which is a totally different path. Um, but then after, it was really inspiring to talk to a lot of people who know a lot about a field and are very passionate. I think passion was one thing we saw in everyone that was there. And that it really inspired me and motivated me. And so that actually changed my whole trajectory. And so now I'm more interested in AI and how AI is involved in so many different fields. And I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't gone to SIIM.
Nice. I was going to say, I don't feel like you have to choose one career path. You could be more than one thing. So you could still be in, informatics or biomedical engineering. You could still do some acting on the side. It's okay. Could be your hobby. So you're both, if I understand correctly, about to finish high school and going off to college, university soon. I'm curious about your future career paths. What do you see yourselves doing in the future?
So I've always kind of known that I wanted to do something in STEM. I'm just not sure what exactly. I've always been very passionate about biology processes. And so recently I've been thinking a lot about if I would want to pursue, an MD or a PhD or both. But I've kind of decided that I'm going to first go to college, see how, where life takes me first. But I mainly in my career just want to be doing something where I'm learning every single day, learning something new every single day. And so right now I'm leaning towards an MD PhD just because I really love the research aspect of science. I've done, a fair amount in high school so far. And I think with new technology, it's going to become a lot more fast paced, and also the findings, of whatever we're doing can be a lot more amplified than it has been in the past. And I'm really interested in working in translational medicine just because I've kind of seen how a lot of the research that we do isn't really able to, make its way back to the patient in a very quick time, and it's also really hard sometimes to remember that whatever we're doing in the lab, in the wet lab, is actually, there's a patient at the end of all of this that we're doing this for. And so I've kind of been really interested in how we can develop tools or processes that make, the transition from research and wet lab to the bedside. And
Yeah, I think I'm leaning more towards the information system side. I'm more interested in technology. And I think one thing that is kind of both exciting and kind of worries me is how fast everything is moving. And so, I kind of want to stay on top of that and learn more about that in college. But then, I'm also pretty sure that once I get to college and I learn a lot more about a lot of different fields, I'm sure that I'll find like different things that I'm drawn to. And yeah, like Estella, I just want to be in an environment where I'm learning from others every day, and I want to be surrounded by people who are smarter than me, and yeah, and maybe acting on the side. I don't know.
I like the acting on the side addition. That's always nice to see. I will also tell you, as someone who's been in the field for a little while, both of you have said things that I think show a lot of maturity in you. So, Stella, you were saying about see where life takes you. You're absolutely correct because you never know. I will tell you that my personal life definitely did not turn out to be how I envisioned it to be. Life is great, but definitely none of this was planned. So follow whatever life throws at you, follow your heart for sure. And then, Sophie, I will also tell you, don't be fazed by any field that seems to be fast changing, because the reality, that's life. So I'm actually a computer science graduate myself. And when I graduated from university, I was told that the average developer left the industry, or sorry, left the profession, I should say, in roughly 7 to 10 years. That was way before any of AI and any of this stuff happened. It's because the industry was so fast paced that the majority of developers would only do full-time development for 7 to 10 years before moving on to something else like project management or product management and so on and so forth. And it is funny because I actually remember at the time thinking to myself, that's crazy. I love what I do. Why would I, quit this in 7 to 10 years? Sure enough, roughly 10 years later, I was one of those that didn't really exit the profession, but kind of just took a side swipe at it. So again, you just never know. The fact that it's fast paced isn't always a bad thing. Don't be afraid of that. I'm sure, Coulter, as a practicing clinician, you have to keep up to date with your knowledge all the time, even though you're recently graduated, but still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Conferences, reading, all that good stuff. And I would honestly just echo what Mahan said. You all are miles ahead of the curve for sure by, having done all the things that you've done. And I think you're set up really well. I think, one of the things we touched on is, kind of how welcoming the community has been for you. And I'm really glad to hear that. I know it's been really welcoming for me, and I'm sure Mahan can testify to that as well. And, it can be intimidating, going into these meetings and seeing all these PhDs and computer scientists who have written some pretty foundational code, but it's really nice to see all the faces at SIIM every year and continue to do this crazy work that y'all are doing.
I wanted to go back to what you said, Mohamed, because I remember learning something really interesting. I think it was Andrew Ng who said this. I'm not sure if you know who Andrew Ng is. He said something really interesting. So he said that with AI becoming so powerful, the ratio of software engineers to product managers needed is now 1-to-1, which is drastically different from before where, software engineers were very, very important. And so I was just thinking how, it's now ideas and the way we market them are much more important than, the code behind it itself. And so I thought that, especially for us, like me and Estella, who are very young and early in our, careers, if we have like a really great idea, I feel like that's much more powerful than someone who's, if we're able to kind of refine our ideas, we can easily build things and create things with kind of what AI provides for us. And so I feel like that's very interesting to think about.
For sure.
I just wanted to add on to that and just say that, I think a lot of people are scared about what AI is going to become or what it has become, but I think it's more of an exciting prospect because it kind of opens up these doors for, I think anything is possible. You can have an idea. Even with like Claude AI, you can have an idea and you can send it into the chat and it'll make code for you. And it just makes everything much more accessible to, if you approach AI from a point of learning.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's such a powerful asset. I've been playing around with OpenClaw recently. It's this latest thing. People say it's going to be, the next huge AI tool. It's like an open source AI agent, but it's almost like a living entity, like on your computer or whatever you connect it to, because it can carry out tasks for you. And yeah, I think I've been playing around. I've been seeing if I can build an app, and I've seen people trying to build companies, starting businesses in 24 hours with this new tool. And yeah, I think it's really exciting.
It is. I was just going to say to what you were saying earlier, Sophie, is there are things that I don't foresee AI being able to replace soon, maybe augment, but not replace. There's always been a talk in my entire professional life about soft skills, the ability to communicate with people, the ability to create relationships and whatnot. And that in every field, I think makes a big difference. Like looking back at my professional life, for example, in software development, yeah, sure, I've definitely met and worked with some really brilliant software developers. But the ones that had the soft skills, the ability to communicate with people, explain their ideas, reason, and whatnot, were always the most successful ones, regardless of how good their technical skills were. And again, that's where AI can definitely augment a lot of things. So definitely use it to your advantage. Be careful so you're not one of those people that just, goes completely offline and hides in their cave and just talking to AI nonstop. I'm joking, just joking. This has been absolutely brilliant. I know we're slowly but surely coming up to time, so I want to thank you both you ladies for your time here today. I know you're taking some very exciting paths in life. Just wanted to say that, remember, your friends in imaging informatics will still be there. So even if you're not in imaging informatics, feel free to drop by and say hello whenever you want. Any parting thoughts, anything you want to say to someone who's maybe considering a career in imaging informatics or a visit to SIIM or a connection with someone? Anything you want to say here?
I think SIIM for me was such a valuable experience because I think there's something about talking to professionals that is kind of irreplaceable. You can't just, do your research. You have to interact with these people. And I think, passion and joint passion and excitement is such a catalyst for all these new ideas and inspiration. And I think it's one of the biggest takeaways for me. And I had, such a great experience.
I would also say never stop asking questions, especially in a field like this. And for, students, just being able to be comfortable in talking to other people and asking questions is probably one of the most important things that I learned while I was at SIIM, because you can't lose anything from, saying hi. You can't lose anything from being interested in something and being interested in a topic and introducing yourself. So that was probably one of the biggest takeaways I learned, to, stop being so intimidated by everybody else and by the grand, notion of it all, by the professionalism of everybody else, by the experience of everybody else, because one time they were you and they're always going to be able to, lend a helping hand. So.
Yeah, I also think there's something so welcoming about everyone who is like interested in the same thing and passionate about their own thing. And so, yeah, I encourage everyone to kind of step out of their comfort zone and throw yourself into communities of people who are very smart and good at what they do and are very excited to share.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time being here with us today. And I know our listeners are going to love this episode. It's not often that we hear from young talent like yourselves. So thank you again, and look forward to seeing you at a SIIM meeting or an episode or something in the future.
Thank you so much for having me.
SIIMcast has been brought to you by the Society of Imaging Informatics in Medicine. Please visit our website at siim.org for more information and educational content, including webinars and an archive of prior episodes. Please follow us on Twitter at sim_tweets. Thank you to our listeners for your continued support.